Hello everyone, my name is Joshua. This is the 134th video on my video journal series. Today's date is Monday, the 22nd of June 2026. How's everyone been? I've been pretty good, thank you. And today I decided to do some homemade cooking. That's going to be today's video title. I know yesterday I talked about home movies, but now I'm going to talk about homemade cooking. So today I had the genius idea of going to Coles and buying essentially not a sushi kit, but all the ingredients to make sushi. So I bought seaweed, I bought some vinegar, I bought sticky rice, the sushi rice, I bought some salmon. So I bought all those ingredients and I decided to make sushi at home, like mini sushi rolls and all that. And I did a subpar job at best. I mean, it was my first time making sushi. The rice bit was straightforward, but I still managed to screw it up because I think I put too much rice in the pot. I didn't put enough water, so they just came out initially very like crusty, and then I just added more water and eventually fixed the problem. But some of the rice was burnt at the bottom. But anyway, and then I had to prepare the salmon and all that, but I think I put too much salmon inside. And then after that, you had to pour the rice, some salt, vinegar, and then you had to mix it around in like a huge bowl. And I think I made too much rice. I think that was my issue, and I think I made like two very big rolls. Like you're supposed to like cut up to make into individual pieces, but after rolling all the seaweed and all that, I think my knife wasn't that sharp, and it just like all fell apart. But I just ate it as like a massive roll. I'm sorry for any Japanese people watching this, but I greatly misrepresented your culture when I try to make a sushi. And I did grab some wasabi, and obviously we had some soy sauce here at home. But yeah, I just did a. I mean, I'm a beginner, right? You gotta learn from your mistakes and all that. And I just produced like a lot of waste, but it was an interesting experience. Hopefully next time I can just you know do a lot better than I did today. But you know, I've been trying to I guess make more meals at home. To cut down on me spending money on takeout and all that, and also for health reasons. Eating junk food isn't the best for you, but the only thing know how to make is like sandwiches. I'm very good at making sandwiches and burgers, but I'm not very good at making foreign dishes. So yeah, that was my experience. But I've been trying to cook more because historically, I've always relied on my parents to cook for me, as every child does. But I was never really taught how to cook, except in a food tech in high school. I was taught how to make like stir fry and all that. Obviously, the school would supply us with the ingredients, but that was like years and years and years ago. So I've forgotten how to do it, but I could most probably do it. Stir fry isn't that hard to produce. You know, um, even simple things like peeling prawns. Like my mom, she knows how to peel prawns and all that, but when I try to peel one, it's like a nightmare. You got to decapitate the head. You got to get rid of the poop canal. You got to get rid of the tail. You got to wash it, and it's just so hard. It's just I wish I was an experienced cook, alright? I'm a very bad chef. I'll tell you that. But, I've been slowly improving upon my skills, and who knows, maybe sometime again this week, I could, give it another go at sushi, or maybe I want to make another dish. Maybe make like pizza, homemade pizza, or, something which I usually get in like takeaway restaurants, for instance, but I can just make it at home for a fraction of the cost. And I think it really just depends on the ingredients that you use. Obviously, I buy my ingredients from the supermarket, but I don't think it tastes as good as the one they use in the restaurants. Or it just depends what you're buying, but it'll certainly be a lot cheaper. I'll tell you that. Other than that, yeah, just buy a lot of canned food, really a lot of canned fish. Um, as you may know on this channel, I'm not really much of a meat person. It's really weird, my relationship with meat. If all I have is just a steak, I won't enjoy it. But a steak with like mashed potatoes, gravy, peas will be a lot more enjoyable. I can't just eat meat or chicken by itself. It has to be in combination with something else and in like small quantities. So I don't mind having a small steak, but a lot of mash, a lot of peas and gravy. But I prefer that over a very large steak, even if it's the same quality or type of meat. I always just prefer smaller meat portions. Not to say I completely don't like meat. I do like meat, just in like small portions. I don't like meat in like large portions, essentially. Um, same with chicken. I love chicken and rice. Chicken and rice just slaps. All right, it's a very simple dish, something which I could theoretically make if I just buy a roast chicken from Coles or whatever, and make the rice myself. I know how to make rice. At least that's one thing I know. You just put two and two together, or you can roast the chicken yourself. But I'm too lazy. Um, that'll taste delicious. You know. Um, and I know at Coles they got the roast chickens for $14. I think I've heard someone call it like the bachelor's handbag, which for those who don't know, the bachelor's handbag in Australia, was it the male? Is it called the male bachelor's handbag? No, because bachelor um, would imply male and bachelorette will imply um, female. Those are the name of two television shows in Australia, by the way, but I'm not talking about that. So the bachelor's handbag, I'm sure if you just type this into Google, will result in that image of the Coles roast chicken, because it comes in this mini plastic bag that has like a handle on it, and it's nicknamed that because, well, it's quite the stereotype that men don't know how to cook, so they just buy pre-made meals from supermarkets, and it just so happens that that roast chicken, which is really cheap for the price, is shaped like a bag and it's a ready-to-eat meal. So that's why they call it the bachelor's handbag. I believe that's where the term came from. I don't know where I heard that term from. It might have been from like a YouTube video. I'm not claiming that term, but when I heard that, it was pretty funny. And now I just think of it as the bachelor's handbag or the divorce, the divorced dad bag, like doesn't know how to cook like me, so just goes to Coles and picks up a roast chicken in a plastic bag, you know. um, and why am I laughing? I don't know how to cook. Like if I was just stranded alone, I would most probably die because I don't know how to make any good dishes. I only know how to make simple dishes, and there's nothing wrong with simplicity. It's just that it gets boring after a while. Don't put me in Gordon Ramsay's restaurant, or even just any restaurant for that matter, because I will stuff things up. I do not know how to follow instructions properly, even on the packets. It always says like confusing terminology, like add one, and then it shows quarter. So I'm like, all right, do you want me to add 1/4 or one? And so let me use this in different terms. On a packet, right, where it says add 1.5 packets of salt or whatever, does that mean 1/2 or does that mean 1.5? That's where I got you. See, that always confuses me. I'm like, does it mean to add just half? Like, do they phrase it as 1/2? Just a single half, which is a half, or do they mean 1.5? I know I might be overthinking this like way too much, but when you see that in like recipes and on the back of the packets where it's phrases it that way, I always wonder what does it mean? Just a half or 1.5? You know? So I always just try to go in the middle. But if you're running a high-end restaurant, or if you're just cooking for your kids and you can't read, I guess, the recipe because of its I guess not vague, but very like half wording. It could mean this, it could mean that. It would, I guess, stuff up your meal. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe because I'm just sort of new to homemade cooking, but like, yeah, it just confuses me where it says, 1.5. Does that mean a half or 1.5? It should just mean if they just mean half, they should just put the half symbol. But I've seen some recipes where they just put, I add one half. They phrase it that way, which is sort of confusing because you just think it means half, but no, it means one and a half. Or it could mean the other way around. See, what I'm saying is pretty confusing because that's what it is. It is confusing. Same thing with like Lego instructions. Sometimes, like they're made to be easily followed. But sometimes I have to look at the Lego instructions like 5 times over to make sure I'm doing like the right thing. And even sometimes, it does seem like a little bit hard. Same thing with like online tutorials and guides. Uh, I thank the people who make them, but like sometimes there's like a step which for me at least, because I'm a dumbass, but I just have like trouble going like, all right, well, it says to do step A, B, and C, but I'm having trouble with C over here. It's just like, you feel like there's information missing, or maybe you're just not getting things, I guess, properly in your head. Um, like it just says, all right, well, close this program, initiate this program, write this code or whatever. And you're like, all right, hold on, too fast, too fast. What does it mean by write this code? Where am I supposed to click on this page to initiate the code, sort of thing? So yeah, that's why I'm not really a fast learner. I'm quite a slow learner, especially when it comes to cooking. And sometimes I find instructions just a little bit like, a little bit confusing, like missing holes. At least for me, if my mum were to read those instructions, she'll know what she's doing. But I guess some things in life, I guess common sense isn't all that common. That's what my dad always used to say to me. Josh, common sense is not so common, and I think that applies to me because I feel like sometimes when you look at instructions or recipes and all that, it just assumes you have like secondhand knowledge in some instance, or you don't look things too deeply as I do. Um, you know, because I just like to question everything. I sometimes take things at like face value when really it just means something deeper. But I'm like, why can't you just say it? Why can't we have a universal sort of system when it comes to terminology? But I guess you can't really have that because no matter where you live in the world, you always got to be pronouncing something a lot differently than someone next to you. Different cultures have different ways of expression. I know I'm going way too deep into this, but it just annoys me when I guess the wording for recipes can be inconsistent. The correct terminology for units, the way that they phrase certain units. So yeah. But other than that, my homemade sushi wasn't terrible, but when I serve it at a restaurant, no. All my customers would sue me, actually. I got a hunch they would. Saying, why did I pay restaurant prices to basically get like kindergarten or like something that someone in kindergarten could do a better job at. Um, but yeah. So yeah, obviously I'm still learning. Other than that, um, it's been a while since I've worked in the fast food industry, but when I worked in fast food, I never got to make any food. I always was the one who was packing stuff, you know. I was never, in the kitchen per se. I was never the one behind the counter making the actual burgers or chicken or beef or whatever. I was always the one who was, packing the meals. Um, and I always wished I knew how to cook, even when I was in the fast food industry. I was always jealous of the chefs because I would never have to deal with the customers. All they had to do was you know, just make chicken. You can very much be to yourself. You don't really need to communicate with people. People just tell you, all right, I want, 2 batches of patties or whatever, or 2 batches of chicken, and they'll just do it. Meanwhile, I always had to deal with the customers, which was always a fun bit in fast food, having customers shout down the microphone or shout down the intercom or front counter, just where's my food sort of thing. Um, so that's what I always like dreamed of. I guess being a chef in fast food, or just like not having to talk to customers. At least in fast food, that is. but that was the only thing I was good at, so they just kept me there. And to be fair, there is like I got some like satisfaction out of packing like meals, like putting everything neatly in the bag, putting all the individual items in the box or carton or bag very nicely together, just like presenting it very neatly, That's something I missed in fast food, was like packing stuff in a bag without like throwing the chips randomly in, and like half of it spills out, sort of thing. Just like neatly packing stuff in a very efficient manner. Most people don't really care about when it comes to fast food, but I do, because when I do get fast food, it just seems like they just throw the burger at the bottom of the bag and it just like seems very squashed. But no, I always took great duty and care to put things in nicely so they wouldn't get squashed or wouldn't get cold or the bag wouldn't tear. Um, but yeah, it's like obviously a lot has changed since I left the fast food industry. So I wouldn't know what it's like working there now. Obviously, it's gotten a lot more expensive. And I only really get it when I'm like too lazy to cook or too lazy to eat something at home, or I know that sounds very stupid, but sometimes I'm just lazy to make a sandwich, or maybe I'm out and I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna eat anything at home. I'd rather get something here. But yeah, I'm just trying to cut down on that sort of thing. And can I close that book? I think I can close that book on my horrible sushi. I'll close that. But I am looking forward to, I guess, making new dishes. Maybe I'll start off with the basics. I know sushi isn't that hard to make, but it's, hard and master sort of thing. I'm no sushi chef or anything. I was nearly stumbling with my words there. Sushi chef. Try to say that fast 10 times in a row. Sushi chef, sushi chef, sushi chef, sushi chef. Your tongue eventually slips up. That's gonna be a tongue twister. Sushi chef. Because they both begin with no, they don't. Sorry. It really is a tongue twister, but they both begin with like a very similar sound, like sh and like the S and the C sound, even though they're different letters. So yeah, try to say sushi chef very fast, and you'll eventually slip up, like I, did on camera just then. But yeah, I got myself to close that book. And what else do I want to talk about today? Nothing much really. Just been applying for more jobs, and I know I've said I'll be applying for more apprenticeships and pathways into full-time careers. I made whole videos on them, but I'm also looking into that. But just in the meantime, I've been applying for a bunch of casual part-time work just in case something pops up. So far, I haven't really got any interviews. I know, you go through all these like AI generated stuff, all the same like interview websites and portals and all that. You type in all your details, when you can work, when's your notice periods. There's some websites, right, for part-time works at like grocery stores and all that, that ask you, oh yeah, what is your desired annual salary? Like, I never really got that question before, let alone for like a grocery store position. They ask you, oh yeah, what is your what is your desired annual salary? I'm like, I don't know. Just pay me what the award is. For those who don't know, the award is basically like a contract between is it a contract? It's basically, your entitlement slash contract within a certain industry that, a union has made with companies. So the minimum award for, let's say, I'm just making this as a hypothetical. Let's say, hypothetically, the award in the fast food industry in this specific sector is $25 an hour. That means for people who are under that award in the fast food industry, they get $25 per hour because it's their minimum entitlements underneath that award. So yeah, so I'm like, yeah, just pay me what it says on the award for whatever job I'm applying for, for a grocery store, all right? Just to be a team member at a grocery store, And it's part-time as well, or casual, Why do I need to put in my desired annual income, So I just put like what the minimum wage was for like 1 year, like a grocery store. But that's like very weird, you know. That's something you get for like a full-time position, which is just like maybe understandable, but it's a very weird question. Is that a right or wrong question? Will I get rejected for asking too much? Will I get accepted for asking too low? What if I were to just put $1? Would they actually hire me? Because you can put $1 on the thing. I don't think it'll decline or anything like that. That's just like borderline slavery. It is pretty much slavery if you just work for a company for $1 a year. You know, like yeah, and you can't like put misleading information on the job application. So why do companies even ask that question is beyond me. It's just like, we can see on your application you only wish to be paid $1 a year. Is that really true? No one's gonna be paid $1 a year. So yeah, it's just a very stupid question. What is your annual salary, desire? Especially for a freaking low entry job, and if it's like a part time or casual position, it's just such a very very stupid question. And you do get like a few, I guess, quote unquote stupid questions in job applications and all that. Questions where you're like, well, how does this how is this relevant to the job I'm applying for? Like when they ask you, oh, why'd you leave your previous job? Well, because I didn't like it. But you're not going to say, oh, because I didn't like my previous job. You're going to say, to focus on education, my studies, my family. You got to sort of like focus on those things. And why does it concern the company I'm applying for why I left my previous job? Maybe they want to know how dedicated I am. Maybe they don't want people with a high, turnover rate. You know, but like, why do they? Oh, excuse me. Like people leave their jobs because A, they've gotten sick of it. B, because of poor management, or C, because it wasn't paying enough. Or D, which is all the above, or E, which could be other. But I feel like those are like the three or four main things that pop into my brain. They leave their jobs because they're not getting paid enough. They left their jobs because of management. They left their poor management. They left their jobs because they got sick of it, or they left their jobs because they had to like relocate somewhere or start a new career because they were forced to. Like it's just very like simple. Why people leave their jobs. So why do you have to even ask a question like that? And I guess like job hunting, it is quite tough in the year 2026. For those who are watching this in the future, 10 or 20 years' time, um, you know, maybe it will be hard to find a job in the future. Maybe it will be harder in certain aspects because of AI, but, the rise of automated technologies. Maybe some jobs will go out of business, just like the milkman, but you know, let's see where the future will take us. And I'm optimistic for the future, despite all the challenges ahead. You know, I bet you the economy won't be as bad in, let's say, 10 years' time than it is now, per se. I know the economy goes through ups and downs. Right now, we're just in like a down momentum, but eventually things will get better. Eventually, I'll get an interview, and for those who are, I guess, in my same position who are job hunting, then, the worst thing that the company can do for you when you get rejected for a job is just, yeah, that's it, a rejection. You're going to get knocked back quite a few times when you're looking for a job, even if it's for a specific position. Just keep on applying to that position because you might get knocked back 3 times before you get an interview. Um, so nothing doesn't really hurt to apply to um, the same job over and over and over again. But I guess nowadays it's more about quantity rather than. Well, it really is just about quantity, really. How many applications he can send. He can send 100 applications but get rejected to all of them. Which is another possibility. I've sent dozens and dozens of applications. I've sent a few today, but I'm just focusing on where I want to work, because I don't want to end up in a job where I hate it and then I just quit automatically because it's nothing like what I thought it was going to be. So I've been doing some research, and based off my research, I've been just making decisions on where I want to work. Generally broad like retail, fast food if I'm desperate, but you know, just like places within the area or places, in the city perhaps. I'm not really fussy about it. Um, but yeah, like I wouldn't mind working, you know, far away if it's accessible by public transport. I don't mind taking a 1 hour commute to work. Maybe it'll get tedious after a while, but I don't mind like long train or bus trips really. As long as I can get there in time, as long as I can do the work, that's all that matters really for me. Um, and I know yet again a lot of other people are in my position, but you can't really give up. Don't give up. You'll eventually get something. I know people, family members, cousins, and my brother who had to spend around a year looking for work before they got something, and I've spent maybe 6 months. So, you know, current trajectory would be another 6 months, but I'm prepared to go to the end of the year, I guess, looking for work, and also looking for, I guess, apprenticeships as well. Just anything really. Um, and obviously, I guess someone who's had obviously experience within the workforce, I'll say find a job that you like. I guess that's my golden um, tip for today. Not that this is going to be a recurring segment again, but find a job that you like, because at the end of the day, um, you know, how much you're going to work and how motivated you are is based on how much you like the job or how interested you are in it. A lot of people do jobs just to get a paycheck, and that's respectful. But for me, I want to work in somewhere where I'm at least like somewhat passionate about it, because you know, I just dread working a job, even if it pays amazingly. I just hate a job where I go in and I just want to quit every single day. To me, that's not a job. It's just borderline like torture, really. That's why, I've just been sort of selective of where I want to work at. I know I should be sending more applications, but, you know, even though I've said, yep, I'll just work in fast food, I'll work here, just in like broad categories. As for like the specific places, I've been like, doing research and saying, all right, would this be a good place to work? Um, I know 99% of the times I'm going to get rejected, um, but it's just, to me, I'm not going to risk that. I'm not going to risk going into a workforce and then, you know, leaving it after a shift because, yeah, it's nothing like what I thought it was going to be, or it's just nothing that caters towards my interests, or I don't like the management or whatever. So yeah, and I guess like there's a bunch of other factors that go into it, like management, the variety of work you're given, and don't, I guess, overthink that. You cannot really experience that when you're on your first day there, when you're actually working there. But yeah, just do something that caters towards your interests. Something that really gets you, I guess, moving. Something that motivates you to get out of bed and do that job, because yeah, don't do a job where you just, I guess, absolutely hate it and you can't stand it anymore. It's not going to be the best for you. And there's always going to be a job where you're going to be interested in. There's you know, despite what I've said about this year, and I guess currently right now, it being a quite a tough time to find a job. There's thousands of, I guess, opportunities out there waiting. So yeah, and yeah, I can most probably close that book about jobs and my job hunting so far. I can most probably close that book. Is there anything else I want to say? Not really. Um, you know, and yeah, well, I must probably just end it here. But yeah, my advice: don't give up hope. There's always going to be opportunity around the corner, and I've appreciated all, I guess, the downtime, time to make this video journal series and all that. Um, but I do feel like it would be nice being able to work again. But anyway, that's enough of me talking, and I guess I'll catch you all next time. Bye, see you, take care. Catch you all tomorrow.